first and foremost is that the person is super high integrity. And if for some reason you don't think that's the case, you never look beyond that. There's nothing else, to consider. So beyond that, the one quality that I think is most important is maniacal customer focus.
Welcome to Founded and Funded. I'm Madrona digital editor Coral Garnick-Duckin, here with our next Investor Spotlight featuring Managing Director Tim Porter. These investor spotlights are meant to give founders and entrepreneurs an idea of what drives our investors and what they're looking for in founders. Tim studied to be a mechanical engineer at MIT and interned here in Seattle at Weyerhaeuser for a few summers before graduating and joining a startup here called Teledasic. Then he pivoted, attending Stanford for his MBA, landing at Microsoft's corporate development group after that. And then he joined Madrona in 2006, where he works with companies like HighSpot, NumberStation, and Runway. So Tim, to kick us off today, directly before starting at Madrona, you had worked at Microsoft doing M&A and Corp Dev. That obviously gives you a lot of valuable experience for your work here at Madrona, but I'm just curious, how do you go from mechanical engineering to venture capital? Were there any specific moments when things sort of switched for you and you made that decision? Or tell us about that transition a little bit.
The short answer is how I got into VC was my wife. She worked for a Madrona company that our founder, Paul Goodrich, was on the board of called Greater Good. And she had introduced me to Madrona and to Greg when I was coming out of business school to talk about opportunities at startups. It was 2003. There were none. That was expected. I went to Microsoft. And after 3 years at Microsoft, I really thought I would stay there longer and try to take an operating role outside of Corp Dev before maybe I eventually went back to startups, which was always my passion. But we went through one of the many reorgs that you have at places like Microsoft. I did enjoy my time there, but I came home and talked about it with my wife, and she said, hey, you should go talk to Greg. And I went and talked to Greg, and he said, hey, we're actually hiring someone. We closed this new fund. One of our existing team members is moving to California. What do you think? And I jumped, thankfully.
So at Madrona now, fast forward, 17 years, almost kind of exactly. Isn't this your anniversary month?
Yep. I guess I just had a 17-year anniversary, which is funny because when I started at Madrona, the one thing that they said definitively was that assume it's a 2-year assignment, and which was fine with because I thought, hey, this is a great pathway back into startups, which I loved a lot, and I really wanted to try my hand at venture and investing, and fortunately, it's worked out for much longer than that.
And so now that you've been here and you've kind of dabbled in a lot of things, what is it that you're focused on right now? What are you most interested in currently?
Yeah, so for the entire time I've been at Madrona, have broadly focused on enterprise software, B2B software. I worked with the server and tools group at Microsoft, which is a little bit an index fund of all things enterprise and B2B software, and have continued to do that here. And so that ranges from software as a service applications down to more software infrastructure type things like cybersecurity and data infrastructure, machine learning infrastructure, and DevOps. And so those have been consistent themes. Of course, the big tech trends that fuels them have changed, from the move to the cloud and the move to SaaS to, in recent times, all things AI and ML, whether it's infrastructure to support the data or machine learning platform services, as well as many, many applications that are taking advantage of the power of AI to deliver better insights and experiences to business customers. So those have been the main areas. I've also done several investments, which I would call advanced tech or deep tech. So that's the geek in me, I think, shows through in all the companies that I work with, but especially some. These could be hardware, software systems like Echodyne, which is making an advanced radar system. I got to work with our founder, Tom, on Impinj early on at Madrona for many years. And so that continues to be an area of interest as well. And while Madrona predominantly invests in software, there's part of every fund that we like to invest in deep tech type things. Have worked on a bunch of things out of the University of Washington. Madrona's spun out, I believe, 21 companies in the last 20 years. And I've gotten to work on a number of those, which have been super rewarding. And then the last thing I'll say is that, Madrona invests from early stage, pre-seed formation stage to what we call acceleration stage, which is often sort of Series B. And for many years, really all of our history, roughly a quarter or a third of our investments are in that pre-seed formation stage. Roughly 50% are what I would call Series A, now that's often called Series Seed, and the last, quarter or so are sort of the Series B a little bit later. And we have one team that works on all those. I've happened to work more on the real early stage. So I was looking back, Coral, and have led about 30 investments for Madrona now. And well, first of all, 90% of those were Pacific Northwest, all in Seattle, Bellevue area, and a handful in Portland. Only about 10% were out of area. 70% of them were first-time founders, and 75% of them were pre-seed formation stage. And so the part that I've loved the most and is a big part of Madrona's strategy is to work with really new early-stage companies in the Pacific Northwest, and we're continuing to double down on that, as am I.
I think one of the things that becomes pretty obvious as folks get to know you is that you're really thoughtful in your approach, kind of how you interact with the founders that you're advising. Talk to me a little bit about how you work with those founders, and I think that kind of goes with the why you like to work with the early founders so much.
And hopefully thoughtful is a good thing and it's not code for, something else. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Definitely not.
Just kidding. I think one thing it stems from is that Madrona's mindset and my mindset is how do we roll up our sleeves and be part of the team? We're not there to try to dictate a point of view or just hey, we must do this, but it's to be a thought partner, roll up our sleeves, and really work with the founders on whatever sets of issues that they need to tackle in order to scale and grow the business. And that those issues vary as the company grows. And so it's remembering that our place, we're riding shotgun trying to help the founder in various ways. I like to keep a really kind of open line of communication and meet and chat frequently with founders. So it's not like they feel like they got to come give Madrona or me some sort of formal update, but that we're in the flow with each other. And, we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but we do have the advantage of seeing a lot of companies. And so I'm working with about 14 or 15 companies right now, have worked with, dozens of them over the years. And as a founder, you are heads down working on yours to the exclusion of everything else. And so we can bring, lessons learned and things we're seeing from that broader perspective and try to help the founder work through different issues. And a lot of times it's not that, I or we have the right answer, but we should know who would be a good person to talk to about the answer. And so making those connections with the right person at the right time to talk through things, I think, is also really important. And, I'd say the founders worked with are like lots of different, stages, ages, backgrounds, et cetera. So there's no one type of founder that I would just want to work with. I think one of the things that I just enjoy is working with lots of different people and finding common ground to work together and collaborate, to problem solve and to build. So that's my favorite part of the job and what gives me the most energy and joy.
And I imagine that you are approached by a lot of founders and founding teams. What is it that you're looking for kind of as you evaluate them and get to know them a little bit?
Yeah. It's a great question. We think about it a few ways, and I know in some of the other investor spotlights, Matt talked about founder market fit, I believe, and that is definitely a big thing that we think about. So just quickly, there's always sort of these four, pieces that we consider, the team, what's the market, what's the product, and what's the timing? Why is this the right time? And at the earliest stage, though, it really comes down, and what I like to look for is this an amazing team, that's attacking a big market, and if they identified some sort of customer problem that sort of bottoms up is a problem that's important and worth solving. And so it's then looking at those things in concert to say, like, yeah, this could be a great investment. And then at the end of the day, it's about the team. It's about the founders, because you're going to be wrong on most of the other pieces and you're going to have to iterate through it, and it's all about the team.
Is there a specific attribute that you tend to look for in a founder?
Yeah.
If you could just name one.
Well, I don't think I can just name one, because there's certain...
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, there's first and foremost is that the person is super high integrity, and if for some reason you don't think that's the case, you never look beyond that. There's nothing else, to consider. And some people talk about the no asshole factor. That's part of having really high integrity. So that's where it has to start. So I have to mention that, even though maybe it goes without saying. So beyond that, the one quality that I think is most important is maniacal customer focus. And that's a bit of an Amazonian management principle, or more than somewhat of a one. It is a core one. But I think so much flows through that everything that the founder is thinking about and doing flows from and back to how do we serve the customer. And that starts with, how did I identify the problem? How does my product solve it? How do I delight them with service and delivery over time? How do I scale over time? So I think it all comes back to that. And then something that's close with that is you need to be sales oriented. And it doesn't mean you have to be salesy in a, everybody thinks of a used car, kind of salesman type way. But I even talked to my high school kids about this. Like, so much about life is persuasion and forms of sales, and so whether you're convincing an employee to come work for you, or convincing literally a customer to buy your product, or talking to investors, or talking to partners, but that ability to be persuasive and to be able to sell, I think, is really critical in a founder. So those are the core ones. The ones that I would add on is, we want people who are really smart, high intellectual horsepower, that they can deal with all of these things. They have to have grit. Founders get inundated with lots of different ideas, and they have to stick to their conviction. What's the North Star? We're gonna grind through and run through any walls in our way. But also, as new data presents itself, to be like open to being coached, and not that we're the end all coaches. What's the data say, and how do we iterate around it? So that's a important balance to try to get right.
Oh yeah, having the conviction, but knowing when maybe this isn't quite the right direction.
Yes.
So if we look back over the 17 years that you've been at Madrona, are there a couple kind of lessons learned that you would share with us, to kind of any misses or stories that you have?
Gosh, there's so many. And so I always encourage founders and our own team and myself is, if you think you've done, enough validation discussions, go do, 5 times that many and see what else you learn. And invariably, it's a good use of time, and you learn a lot. So that's one. You can never do too much customer validation in the early days, because if you get that wrong off the bat, it's tough to recover.
So the final kind of main question that I have for you is, I know that Madrona is growing, where, strategies have changed, opened the California office, but it's also, I know, really important for you to sort of stick true to the culture that has sort of always remained with Madrona, and particularly with Tom and Paul when they founded it. Talk to me a little bit about sort of how you've stuck to that, even with the changing markets, and adapting to what Madrona needs to be.
So Madrona's been around since 1995, and we're in the technology business, we're in the innovation business. The market's always changing, and so we have to innovate and change and evolve as well. But I think you also do it in a way that sticks true to the, what got you here. And I think in Madrona's case, it was the culture created by Tom and Paul and the rest of the early founders. And the things that I think are so important that they always showed and continue to show in the case of Paul is they always put the founders ahead of themselves. It was always about, creating success for the companies. And if you do that, the firm will be successful. But it's always about the founders. They were always about the team here more than themselves. Putting the group ahead, rewarding everybody in the team, and building a really collaborative culture where, one wins, the whole firm wins. So then the whole firm works together. It is thinking down the road and thinking big. It's taking big bets, on the right founders. So taking risk, when you need to. And we talk about it frequently, and we have a decision or something to say, hey, what would Tom, do? And that's really important to us, I think, forever as a firm, and for who I am as an investor and as a person.
So the last two to wrap up here are just a couple quick hit questions. I know all of you guys always have books and things that you recommend to founders. Are there one or two must reads or any of your favorites over the last few years?
I'd say the two that I've often recommended. One of them is a book called Essentialism. And I think that it's about basically focus, and it's good for everybody to read and make sure you're focusing on those things that are absolutely the most important, or maybe it's only one thing. Another one, just from a management standpoint, that I like a lot is called Amp It Up by Frank Slootman. He's the CEO of Snowflake and successful CEO of ServiceNow and Data Domain before. His style and culture aren't necessarily for everyone, but the learnings you can take away around urgency and decision making, I think, are really valuable to any founder, and also is a quick, easy read.
And final question for you. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working, not at board meetings, not helping founders, which I know is a lot? So what is your kind of way to unwind?
I love spending time with my family. My wonderful wife, Jenny, 19 years. And we have two kids in high school, and they're both into lots of sports. So we spend a lot of time going to different sports games with them: basketball, soccer, football, baseball, track. So I really love that. And then I love all things outdoors. So love to fish and to bike and to ski and snowboard and to run, do all those things as much as I can. And yeah, I'd say those are the main things. It's a lot around sports and outdoors and family when it's not work. There's some other nonprofits I'm super passionate about. One that I'm working with a lot is called Global Partnerships, and it's Seattle-based, that help people in Central and South America and in Africa with raising their livelihoods out of poverty. And we do that with helping to fund certain institutions that then do microfinance funding into those individuals, as well as some direct investing as well in enterprises and businesses there, which are having an impact first, as well as a sustainable business viewpoint.
That's awesome. It sounds like a great program. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me today for this Investor Spotlight. I know everybody's going to enjoy getting to know you a little bit better, and I appreciate it.
That sounds great. Feel free to hit me up, tim@madrona.com. One big myth out there is you can't reach out to VCs. Well, I think our emails are still on the website. So look forward to chatting.
They are. Thanks, Tim.